Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all so much for being here. I'm Mary Salvante. I'm the director of Rowan University Gallery Museum. It is a pleasure to see you all here. I just have some brief remarks and comments, and we'll give a little introduction on the artists so that we can get to the program today. But I just want to say how truly honored we are to have this exhibition, to be presenting this program to you. What's interesting is our shows, and this one in particular, always look so flawless that it just comes together so beautifully. But there's a lot of things that happen behind the scenes. There's graphic design, there's creating banners, there's making layouts, there's designing the lettering, there's running the tech. And I just want to thank and put a shout out to our gallery coordinator, Kristen Qualls, who just handled it all so beautifully and flawlessly. Thank you, Kristen. We also have many, many student workers here today that also provide lots of help for us. Fran Lombardo, Jayla Ross, Rachel Hannan, and Layla Hewitt are all here. Thank you so much for your help. Today we have our Rowan production friends doing some video, Al Amoroso and John Acast. Thanks for your help with that. And our photographer, Gavin Schwager, thank you so much for your help too. None of this would have been needed. None of this would have been necessary. All this hard work would have been for nothing if it hadn't been for the artists and the artists' work and their amazing, amazing stories that they have to tell. So a little bit about the artists. Gayle Asali Dickson, she joined the Black Panther Party in Seattle in 1970, was the only woman artist for the Black Panther newspaper between 72 and 74. Between 74 and 76, she taught at the Oakland Community School using art as a teaching tool. After ordination, in 1998, she served as pastor of a church in South Berkeley that started the Friday night art and dinner program, exposing children to the world cultures and art and food. Her Little Bobby Hutton youth and adult literacy program at the church used the Black Panther newspaper also as a teaching tool. Over the years, she continued her creative work, exhibiting in the Bay Area and nationally. Emory Douglas, who will be joining us on the screen up on the wall, was the Black Panther Party's Minister of Culture from 67 until the 1980s. He art directed, designed, and illustrated the Black Panther newspaper. Working with other artists and designers, his direction sustained the paper's bold graphic look. After the party's newspaper ceased publication, he worked as San Francisco Sun reporter, a black newspaper in San Francisco. Douglas had solo exhibitions at the LA Museum of Contemporary Art, the New Museum in New York, and he recently, and in 2015, he became the first living black person to win an AIGA medal for contributing to the field of visual communication. In 2022, he was inducted into the Society of Illustrators Hall of Fame. Malik Edwards, in his youth, discovered his talent by drawing Captain Marvel, Superman, and other superheroes as black, imagining himself in those roles. He joined the U.S. Marine Corps in '63 and served in Vietnam. After returning in '66, the Corps recognized his artistic talents and assigned him to work as Corps illustrator. In 1970, Edwards moved to North California and trained as an apprentice with the Black Panther Party Minister of Culture, Emory Douglas. As the head of the Black Panther Party DC regional branch, he designed posters, flyers, magazines for pro-black events and anti-drug campaigns. His work has been exhibited in galleries in DC and San Francisco Bay Area. Akinsanya Kambon also served in the Marine Corps in Vietnam. He was a combat illustrator and infantryman and was awarded several Purple Hearts for his bravery. Upon his return, he joined the Sacramento chapter of the Black Panther Party as a lieutenant of culture. He worked on the layout and illustrations for the Panther newspaper as well. Kambon earned a BA and MA from California State University, Fresno. and was professor at California State University, Long Branch for 26 years. His recent exhibitions include Jack Shaman Gallery in New York and Crocker Art Museum in Sacramento. Other group exhibitions included at the Hammer Museum in Los Angeles, Oakland Museum, California, Joyce Gordon Gallery in Oakland, and many others. This experience, meeting these artists and bringing this exhibition to Rowan University, really would not have happened without the creative, curatorial vision, tireless research and investigation, writing, and relationship building by our curator, Colette Gaiter. Professor Emerita from Department of Africana Studies and Art and Design at University of Delaware, Colette's career started in graphic design and morphed into digital interdisciplinary art. Her visual work exhibited internationally includes artist books, photographic digital prints, multimedia collage, assemblage, artist websites, and interactive computer-based illustrations. Now she writes about artists, designers, and previously explored aspects of visual culture. Since 2005, her essays and articles on the activist and Black Panther Party artist Emory Douglas have appeared in various publications, including the books Black Panther, The Revolutionary Art of Emory Douglas, and The Black Experience in Design. Other recent art writings include catalog essays for the Delaware Art Museum Jazz Age Illustration, the Poster House Museum's Wonder City of the World, New York City travel posters, the Norman Rockwell Museum's imprinted illustrating race book reviews for the Brooklyn Rail. I might also add, she wrote a fantastic essay for us for Jameer Richmond Edwards exhibition that we had in the gallery. We'll make sure you add that to your bio next time. That's okay. Anyway, we are so delighted, so excited, and so pleased. Please welcome Colette Gaiter.
All right. Well, thank you all for being here, despite the threat of a thunderstorm, a winter storm. Okay. Here we go. All right. So I'm just going to talk very briefly about some aspects of the work that you might not notice or know about by going through the gallery, but I would ask that you try to read as much as you can. There's a timeline on the back wall, and there's information on the, we call them tombstones, on the lists of the works, because all of these images have a story. The four artists in this gallery still practice after working on the Black Panther newspaper over 50 years ago. Emory Douglas worked on the paper for 13 years as its art director, designer, and lead illustrator, and the others were there for shorter periods of time. They learned through the party how necessary visual messaging is to any liberation movement. I decided to include other Black Panther artists in addition to Emory Douglas after I wrote about them for this catalog, Imprinted, Illustrating Race. And the curator of that exhibition is here, Robin Phillips Pendleton. So that exhibition includes images by and about Black people throughout U.S. history. The show is coming to the Delaware Art Museum in October of this year, and that's in Wilmington, yes. A video with 3 of the artists from a symposium for the exhibition will be here in the gallery. It's not on right now, but this is a talk that we had about their work in that exhibition. I hope that as you view the works, you will read the artist statements and descriptions. We invite you to look at the timeline also that helps you to contextualize the history and political environments surrounding these artists. In alphabetical order, I'll point out a few of these essential details. In her historical Black women series, Dickson shows Queen Ida B. Wells the journalist, anti-lynching crusader, and entrepreneur collaged with newspaper stories. These details show Dickson's inclusion of a Ghanaian Adinkra symbol on Wells's necklace, representing humility with strength. These works include the Gia Nyame symbol that represents deep faith in a supreme being. You might get the impression, looking at her work here, that Gayle Dickson only represents women. Well, she does paint men and also has a body of work called the Human Ecology series, which is about relationships among women, family, and friends. These relationships represent the reasons for doing liberation work. Emory Douglas often digitizes his original drawings and paintings to remix using different patterns and colors. This painting is currently in the Metropolitan Museum of Art's exhibition, Flight into Egypt, Black Artists in Ancient Egypt, 1876 to now, because the mother wears an ankh around her neck. It's titled Mother's Love, and it's from 1995. He used pen, ink, color markers, and color pencils on bond paper. This 2012 digital print version of Mother's Love and Father's Love are in the gallery right on that wall. A print of Douglas's from an original painting of enslaved Africans that's also in the exhibition evolved into this mural. The figures of enslaved Black people were adapted from Saki Mafandikwa's book, African Alphabets. The Epa Adrinka symbol, which represents handcuffs and law and justice, creates the border along the bottom. So you might look at Malik Edwards' digital montage that's in the gallery and wonder why AI-assisted work is in this exhibition. He's pushing the software to respond to prompts that result in more realistic Black people. He is helping to bring DEI to AI. Edwards' work often riffs and comments on popular culture. On the left is a Black Panther newspaper back page poster that appropriates Dorothea Lange's famous migrant mother image. He responded to a Department of the Navy ad to declare that you can't be Black and Navy too. After working in clay for almost 4 decades, Professor Akinsanya Kambon creates vessels, figures, and wall plaques. As he explains, quote, "These works are kiln-fired in African ceremony using a Western-style raku technique mastered over decades. These ceramics visualize stories of the Black diaspora and are tools for spiritual and educational instruction covering Black histories, African histories, mythologies, as well as the stories of violence and revolution from throughout Africa and the Americas," end quote. He visualizes history in a way that elevates, quote, "everyday people and their perseverance through hardship." Birth of the Vanguard was in the Hammer Museum's Made in LA exhibition, and there's a video about that on the wall. This piece commemorates the Black Panther Party's 50th anniversary in 2016. So here, those were just a few details that you're not going to get, which is why you drove here today in a potential snowstorm. So what I would like to do now is invite the artists to come up and we'll have a conversation so you can hear more from them about their work. So thank you again. Oh, were you able to hear me before? Yes. Oh, okay. I was afraid of the feedback. Okay, so we're here today to celebrate your work. Some of you created over 50 years ago as very young adults. When do you think you realized the significance of what you were doing as a Black Panther artist and the effect, long and short term, that it would have on the ongoing international liberation project? Who wants to start?
Well, I think I realized the effect it was having once that Black Panther coloring book hit the press in 1968. Hello? Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Yeah. And when after the coloring book hit the press, I noticed how much attention it brought to me, because nobody ever paid attention to me as an artist. I'd been an artist in the Marine Corps. I'd been to Vietnam. I was a combat illustrator in Vietnam. I got blown up twice. I got 3 Purple Hearts. I come back and nobody knew a damn thing about who I was. Once the coloring book hit the press, COINTELPRO decided they would use that to attack the Black Panther Party's Free Breakfast for Children program. That coloring book was never designed for children. It wasn't made for children. It was made for men and women who were illiterate like I was. And I felt that a lot of this history they needed to know. But COINTELPRO focused on that coloring book. They said that the Panthers are using this coloring book to teach the kids how to kill pigs before we give them breakfast. That was all lies, but that's what they did. And that's when I realized how powerful the artwork is as a weapon against capitalism and imperialism.
Thank you. Anybody else want to say something?
You want us to say it? Well, when I became aware of the significance of what I was doing back then, 2016. I was on the host committee for the 50th anniversary. And I was on a committee with several other members of the Black Panther Party. And we were all around the table. And they talk about that time and the experience and the meaning and the value of what we were doing and who we were at that time. And I began to see another part of me for the first time. I'm 100 years old, and I'm finally looking and seeing myself, you know. And so I went to the museum, the Oakland Library, and I researched all my drawings. That's the first time I researched all of my drawings, and I saw them. And so actually it was 2016. Not only did I realize the value of us as artists and our artwork, but I realized the value of what we were doing as a group of, 16 to 22, and some old timers like they were 28, 30 maybe, you know. And that's when I really saw. Long story short, 2016.
I had one dream when I was coming up about being an artist. I wanted to draw for Playboy. That was my thing. And then I saw the Black Panther Party newspaper. That dream changed. So I think it was 70, I got my first drawing in the newspaper. And it was pretty immediate for me because the way people responded to it, especially in DC, because I was like the artist for the chapter. And the way people responded in the chapter, because when we was doing the work, the whole thing was, first Emory was doing the back page, and everybody's waiting for that. And then I got that opportunity to be the person that was doing it. And just the way people was like, what's going to be on the back, where you walked around trying to figure out what you're going to put on there. And just that immediate feedback from the Panthers is what did it for me. It's like, where you put it on? And I kind of was kind of stepped in Emory's shoes for a few minutes there. And I was like, of course, I was feeling really happy and proud of myself that I could actually, that I was allowed to do that. So it was, for me, it was pretty immediate because everything I did had like an immediate response. And so, and then I did stuff in the community in DC and I got that immediate feedback. And years later, I met young people who still had that yellowing flyer on their wall, you know, so it was pretty immediate for me.
All right, so we are joined by Emory Douglas by satellite. Just kidding. Well, probably, yeah. He is in California. He's not with us today, but here virtually. And this next, I want you, Emory, to be the first one to answer this next question. It's a little bit long, so hang in there. For the Black Panther Party's 10-point program, which you can see listed clearly in Professor Kambon's part of the exhibition, was used as a foundational document that inspired many of the other artworks here, past and present. For example, Gayle Asali Dickson's 2017 postcard series reiterated some of the 10 points, including the issue of homelessness, which has become a much bigger problem in the US. So, Emory, how do you directly or indirectly address quality of life issues in your current work? Okay. How do you directly or indirectly address quality of life issues in your current work?
Oh, well, it's still based on the issues that people in the community are concerned with all around. They're universal. They may be coming from an Afro-American perspective, but they're universal issues dealing with social concerns and social justice. So that links them together and transcends borders and boundaries, what have you, and cultures in many ways. And so I think in that context, the work, what I do makes it as relevant as it was historically, and at the same time, the expressions that people get from it, how they respond to it, lets you know, as the comrade said there, how lets you know that it's relevant in the context of what you're speaking on, the issues that you were talking about are relevant in that context. So it's a language, a communication language for me.
Okay. So anyone else want to speak on that?
I like what Emory said about it being a language, because the thing that we were doing, just go back to that time, people were less literate than they are now. So our work was a language. That's how we taught people, by looking at that's why the pictures were so big. That's why the headlines were so big. Because if they just saw the pictures and didn't read a word, they got our message. And if they just read the headlines, they got our message. So it was a work. It was almost like our version of hieroglyphs. It was a language, and I really like that you said that, Emory.
And actually, I'd like to comment, bounce off of the idea of the universal issues. But what we were addressing is the same thing that's been addressed since the beginning, recorded. I'm also an ordained minister, since the biblical times. It's the same message, and it's going to be the same message all into the future. It's about the values of caring versus not caring, and the values of love versus not being loving, And so what we were portraying in our newspaper, in our language, in our actions was, and even that we wanted to model as city workers, as members of boards, Board of Education, on committees, we were modeling caring, and they're, like you said, they're universal values. And we were speaking truth, and we were speaking truth to power. And I don't care how you try to destroy that truth is going to come through. And I think I was telling somebody in the audience, truth is going to come through like the weed through the cracks in the ground. It's going to come. Okay? So that's what we were doing. We were responding off of universal values, we were responding off of caring, and we were responding off of truth.
One of the things that I realized after being in the party was how this struggle is not a local or a national, it's international. And the forces of oppression are international. When you look historically, I remember one thing Malcolm X said, out of anything you can study, history is best qualified to reward all research. And then I started looking at the history of this country and understanding something that Kwame Ture said back in '67, that the birth of this nation was conceived in the genocide of the red man. I never forgot that. And then I look and I see what's going on in the world, and I see the genocide of the Palestinians. And I understand that this fight is never ending, and it's an international struggle against capitalism and imperialism, and that's the fight we have to fight. And I'm so proud of the youth, the children, the young people, because they're picking up the banner, they're picking up the torch, and they're carrying the fight. Thank God.
You know, the art was a visual language, and it was, you know, and it had symbols that that people identified with. Like first off, we'll start with the pig drawing, which Akinsanya has in some of his in the coloring book. That became the artwork that dealt with the self-defense and social. Then the artwork that dealt with the social programs and what have you. But you have how people identified with that was what popularized it and what makes it relevant. Because when you get into the caricature drawings, you get into people they see their uncles or they might have seen their aunties in the images that reminded them of. So they become the heroes in the art. They become the performers in the art. So the art becomes beyond just me art, but it becomes a we art. It's one that the community identifies with itself. And so that makes it, gives it a life existing beyond just the local community, but transcends that. Then when you talk about transcending that, how does it do that? Well, the communities, other communities, and those see within the art themselves the social concerns that they have. Maybe it's coming from an Afro-American perspective, but it's still dealing with social justice issues. And since it has an impact, it's being inspired, being inspired with those as well, those communities as well. So it's an art that informs, enlightens, and educates.
All right, thank you.
So-
Did you have something?
Yeah, the one thing that Emory did that nobody had done before, he got away from that image of the pretty, coiffed hair, handsome. He took regular people, that grandma with her head tied up, the old man, people that nobody paid attention to, and made them heroes, showed them with the gun, showed them fighting, showed them standing up. And that was that was a change, because very few people, maybe some back in the day, a couple people did it, but what he did was he brought everyday people to the spotlight, and it inspired us to do the same thing. So before Emory, I can't remember seeing anybody doing anything like having Mama out there with the gun saving us.
All right, thank you. So one of the things that I wanted to ask you about, Malik, from reading about and studying your work, it seems like all of you, including Emory Douglas, are guided, at least partly, by a belief system, and not necessarily a religious one, but some kind of belief system. That could be belief in the power of ancestors and lost heritage, or more traditional spiritual or religious practices. And as she just mentioned, Gayle Asali Dickson was a minister for many years. So, Malik, would you like to talk about how your spirituality finds its way into your work as an artist?
I grew up like most black people in the South as a Southern Baptist. from that, I got a value system of right and wrong. You know, how do unto others really bring with me. And that just that idea of do unto others has been probably a guiding belief. Even though I'm not a religious person, I practice no religion. But that principle stayed with me about love and about caring for humanity. That's my guiding principle, that I care about human beings and that I want to see a world where we can prosper in. And so all of my ideas is projected into how do we do that, or making a comment about that. Even in the most simplest drawing, I'm still guided by that idea I don't have this belief about heaven and hell. You know, I do right because it's right, not because I'm afraid to go to hell. I do it because that's what I believe humans should be doing. And I try to be as honest as possible in a capitalist society where they can use the truth against you. So I'm always guided by those things. That part, my original idea came from growing up as a Christian, but it evolved once I saw what other people, other religions, other ideas, other philosophies, especially Buddhism. Buddhism probably has the closest thing that I relate to today because of meditation and mindfulness. And even that, being mindful of what's going on and how I'm approaching the world. My spirituality is really start from do unto others. I mean, if I can say I had a core philosophy, it's around that idea of treating people right and being honest. You know, that's the core of my, but I'm not like doing it because I'm afraid to go to hell or I don't want to go to hell. You know, not, you know, personally, I don't really believe that, but, you know, but I'm saying I'm not doing it for any, like, I'm scared of God kind of thing, you know. I'm doing it because I believe it in my core as a human being. I should do right by you.
Go ahead.
Just a little bit bouncing off of Emory and Malik, and the 10-point platform program embodies that same concept. So, and I try to put it in all my drawings. Something from the 10-point platform program is in there, one way or the other, because the program is about universal. What Emory was saying about social justice and care.
Gayle, I remember at one point you told me that someone pointed out that the Black Panther Party was doing ministry.
Oh, this is at the 50th anniversary of the Black Panther Party, and a member of the church that I was attending at that time, she told me, she said, you know, when I was young, my mother told me, don't you go near those Black Panthers, because they got guns. And she said, after going through this exhibit and looking at all your survival programs and understanding it in relationship to the 10-point platform program, she said, you guys were doing ministry. I agree.
And I got to piggyback off of what she said, because when you look at that 10-point platform and program, our thing was to serve the people. And one of the things that we found out is that children were having problems in school learning to read and learning math. And we talked to some of the children, and we tried to find out, how come y'all aren't learning anything? And they talking about, well, every time the teacher starts talking, she's talking about apples and bananas and a pie, and we hungry, and we ain't had no breakfast. And when she says, if I gave Sally 2 apples and I had 5, how many would I have left? I'm sitting up there saying, I ain't giving Sally none of these apples, because I'm going to eat these apples. So that's when we started that free breakfast for school children program. I think that there was a lot of controversy about that. People were saying that the parents are supposed to feed the children. Well, that's true. But sometimes parents aren't doing that. Sometimes children are going to school hungry. And the parents, if the parents aren't doing it, we have to step up to the plate, and we have to make sure that the children are eating. When we spearheaded and started that free breakfast for school children program, that so embarrassed the U.S. government that they had to come out and start feeding kids free breakfast and free lunch. And they still doing that today. But don't nobody give credit of that to us, the Black Panther Party. They don't give us credit for that. But all the things that we were doing, matter of fact, they even tried to attack us with that coloring book. COINTELPRO said, yeah, y'all, they're making the kids study the coloring book, How to Kill a Pig Before They Feed them breakfast. All that was lies. That was all things that they came up with that was not true. But some people believe that. COINTELPRO did a damn good job of destroying the Black Panther Party. But they can't destroy a damn thing because the kids that are coming right now, they learning the truth and they're carrying the torch and they're carrying the fight. Thank God for the youth.
And we don't know how long we will still have those government breakfast programs. So I have the next question is for Emory Douglas. Can you hear me? All right. So I would like you to tell everyone a little bit about your experience in Chiapas, Mexico, because it was so incredible. And there are 2 embroidered tapestries along the wall here that resulted from collaboration with the people there. But yeah, just briefly tell us about what you were doing there and how you and this group of people who are working for their own liberation, how you found common ground.
Yeah. Well, first you had Callum Duarte, who had the Idelo Space Art Center there at the time, who was a well-known artist in some parts of California. And he invited me there in 2012 as a part of an artist in residency. That was just to go there. And when I went there, and we went to do some collective painting. You had the Chiapas is worked the land. They were opposed to NAFTA, and I think it was they went to war with the Mexico in 1994. They had a rebellion during that, and the Zapatistas are Mayan. They're Mayans, and so went there to and Caleb had some good relationships with them. And there were other artists among myself who came from different parts of the world, came together as a collective, and we went to do out in the jungle and in the rural areas to do mural painting in relationship to some of their locations where they had their protocols, where locations where they meet and have all the do different events and what have you. We went there to do different at various times to do paintings. I went there 5 times. When I went there the first time, I was there, and I was we went and we painted the school. I got photographs and a whole slideshow that talks about that. But we went to paint a school that's out in the jungle. These young kids, they go to school for 3 months, then they go back home and they work the land for 3 months and they come back and what have you. And so we went there to deal with that. And the school is dirt floors, tin roof, open sides. That's their auditorium. That's where they come in to meet and what have you. And so we went there to paint. We had on limited time. We went there to paint. We had to buy the paints. You have to bring your sleeping bags. You have to bring all those things. They just show you tender love and care. You eat what they eat in the context of what they fix. And mostly is the rice and beans and what have you. And we slept on the floors of the place. Bats flying over us at night. You got to go to the bathroom. You go to the outhouse, out in like back in the days and what have you. But it showed you tender love and care. But they were in solidarity because they were trying to build their own infrastructure and what have you. And they didn't say they didn't want to deal with bad government. They didn't want to deal with bad government. And they had supporters who came from all over the world. Because I went there the first time was having a big conference. And they had indigenous people who came from all over Mexico. And people come from Europe and all over the place come there in solidarity with the Zapatistas and their struggle. And they have an alternative school, a training school, where they teach young people who've never had any type of skills. They come in and learn a skill. It could be anything from doing barber to doing other things, mechanics, all kinds of basics things. And they take that back to their indigenous communities and they share them skills with them. So I was there for that. And what happened is I was about ready to leave to come back home. And they took me to the school and I met the gentleman who was in charge of it. And they said, and I was fixing to leave. And when I told him I was about ready to leave, he said, "Oh, we're having a conference. And we were looking for a Black Panther to come back to speak at the conference." And I couldn't say no. So I was back on my second journey to this indigenous conference that they had there. And during that time, Caleb Duarte had got the Mayan Women's Collective to do the embroideries that he knew, that you see, one of them that you see. It was 5 or 6 of them. And they did them with that's Mayan language in the embroideries that you see there. And so it was one family who did the hand embroideries. Then they had to take them to another family that did with the machines and what have you, the embroidery. So it took about, he said it took about 6 months for them to get them, because you're in the rural area, you know. So you going from one place to point B and point back, and then the Zapatistas got their own timeline that they work on and what have you. And so you know, we painted a store, a Zapatista store, on the way Palenque, where all the historical monuments are in that part of the world. There's a store on that freeway that he took me there, invited me to see the people, the Zapatistas who ran the store. And then we went in and we painted the store, but we was living in the jungle. Back of that was the jungle. and they just happened to have a place there that they have their own hospital. They have some of their locations have hospitals. Some of their places have an ambulance service. Just same thing like in Black Panther. Then those who were not Zapatistas in some of those areas, when they had differences or disputes, they would come to the Zapatistas to resolve those issues and what have you. But at the same time, they were being attacked because they took the land from them avaricious landowners and turned it into and took it back from them. So what happened is, when you had the bad government, real bad government, for the last two whoever presidents of the government were there they would allow those right wingers, extremists, to come in, and it would attack the Zapatistas. They would catch them on the roads in the jungle. They would attack them, beat them down, all those kinds of things. But you know, they had their own government self-sufficiently, like our 10-point platform and program. But you know, it may not be in the aesthetics of it is in the inner city, but it was still something that they were developing themselves. We went to, I remember they said we're going to a pharmacy. We was going to a pharmacy that they had. And I thought we was going to a pharmacy that had, you know, like you have stuff in the regular other pharmacy. When we went to that pharmacy, they had herbs that they knew the history of, that people would come in and they would and use those herbs to treat them with those herbs and what have you. Yeah. And they had, I forgot, the first president of Mexico was a Black man. I forget, Guerrero, I forgot his name. He was a Black man. And they had his picture on the building there out in this rural community. They showed him and that was the name of their, Vincent Guerrero, I think it was like that. Yeah. And so, and I remember going one more time, I remember we was going up in the agriculture area, and the young man was taking me up there, and he asked me, "Do you know Mumia?" And I said, "Yes, I know him." And I explained to him. And it was amazing because I didn't, you know, it's a young man. I think he was about 20 years old, 20 years of age. And he asked me, did he knew that I knew Mamiya? Yeah. But it was impactful, very impactful. Celebrated, brought in 1 year, brought in the new year with them, went to a party, Zapatista party at one of the locations, and did a party with them and what have you. Yeah. But you know, it was challenging because you not you in the rural areas. You may come to Chiapas, the city, there in Chiapas, and enjoy that. But when you going out in those areas, you're in the jungle. You out in every you out in there, and they got signs when you ride down the road in locations that you know that this has been land that the Zapatista had liberated, because it's got the Zapatista star there. And I was started asking, I said, what does this mean? They said this is land that they liberated or they had took back at one time. Yeah, but now, you know, the dynamics is shifting and changing. They're having some really difficult challenges right now. They will have a lot of people come in. I went to it was just this the lady who was a woman who could be the leader of the Zapatistas. It was I forgot her name, but she was the leader. She passed. She died after a little after the 1999 uprising, because she had cancer. And then they opened it up called little schools. It's where people who were interested in going to visit the Zapatistas to know what they were about, they opened up little schools. Little schools means that where you were assigned to go stay with a Zapatista family out in the jungles or wherever, and you had to do what they did. And so I went to stay. You want me to cut it off? I'll cut it off.
Well, thank you, Emory. I mean, I know that this is so important to you. This was a really important site of collaboration for you. And there have been numerous ones around the world, in New Zealand, Tanzania, different places in Europe. You know, so this is how Emory is continuing his work internationally. So I wanted to switch gears here a little bit and talk about the Vietnam War, because there's work here in the exhibition that relates to two of the artists' time serving in the war. Remember that this war killed 55,000 American soldiers. A disproportionate number of black soldiers died in that conflict. Malik Edwards and Professor Kambon both served in the war and were combat illustrators. They were both Marines. Emory Douglas was exempt from the draft because he was caring for his mother, who was legally blind. Several works in the exhibition, including videos, are about the Vietnam War, including Emory Douglas's collaboration with Spike Lee for the film Da 5 Bloods. So I want to ask both of you, how did serving in the war affect your work as an artist? And how did being an artist affect the impact the war had on you? In other words, how did your work help you process what you experienced?
So, I became an illustrator after Vietnam.
Mike, please.
I became an illustrator after Vietnam, but when I went to Vietnam, I was a grunt. I mean, on the ground, point, the first in, you know, like when you're leading, you're going on a patrol, there's this first person they call a point. So they're, you know, trying to check for booby traps and try to figure out where you, or know where you're going, and making sure the people behind you don't get hurt because you're paying attention. And, but I used to have these little cartoons I used to draw when I was in Vietnam about our experience, which I kept to myself because they were very, I put it like the lieutenant, my company commander or the gunny would not have liked what I was drawing. But the war, the thing about Vietnam, where if I was affected by anything, because before we went to Vietnam, there wasn't, the war was basically led and fought by white people. I mean, there was some wars where, we did valiant things, but basically it was about white guys. But in Vietnam, like when we'd be out on a sweep, it's like maybe 4 companies just sweeping through this area, looking for VC. In all of the points, when you look down, because I'm out front, everybody on this side and that side of me are either black, Mexican, or Native American. Rarely did you see white points. If it was a black fire team leader in the squad, that's who was the first squad. That was the first one. They'd always put us out front. So that experience kind of like really, and then just being there and seeing what we were doing, there were many times I felt like I was in the Ku Klux Klan, especially when they give you an order like, if you receive 1 round from the village, level it. So then that's what you're doing, you're burning. You got your Zippo lighter, you're burning down the building, you're shooting the animals, and the chickens and the pigs.
So how did that make its way into your work? I mean, like your work doesn't specifically have imagery from Vietnam.
It made me want to come home and fight for us. So when I discovered the Black Panther Party, and I came out and I realized there was a chapter in DC, that was my next stop. So I went from the Marine Corps for about a month, looking for a job and trying to get myself together. I had actually found a job and the Black Panther Party at the same time. I chose the Black Panther Party. And then so all of my work and my anger and angst and stuff I was going through went into that work. But as an artist in the Marine Corps, I didn't get that until I came back from Vietnam because they couldn't find anything for me to do that I wouldn't get in trouble. And then they found out I was an artist and there was an opening in the art department and they sent me there. And of course I got in more trouble because I had time to read. And so I'm reading Black history and reading all this other stuff. And so I got in even more trouble.
Professor Kambon, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I would. And that's a wonderful thing, but that's where I found my humanity was in Vietnam. I traveled to Vietnam as a young 18, 19-year-old in the Marine Corps, just like Malik. And I understand the point man thing. I was always a point man on these patrols and all that kind of stuff. And it was mostly Africans out there in the front. And when I guess, finding my humanity, I found that in the back of a pickup truck as we were driving through the village of Chu Lai. As soon as we got in the village, we heard an explosion. We turned around and went back, and the U.S. Army had fired a mortar into a field where some kids were playing. They blew up 6 babies. And I jumped out of the back of the pickup truck and I ran down the hill, and I saw that 3 of the babies were still alive. And I grabbed one of the babies and I started running up to the truck. And the captain got out of the truck and he said, leave them alone, leave them alone. And I said, I can't leave these kids to die like this. They don't have no hospitals in Chu Lai. There's nothing they can do for these kids. So I took the baby and put it in the back of the truck. I gave it to the driver and had him do it. I ran down and got another child. There was 3 of them still alive. One of them was a baby. One of them was about a 5-year-old boy. And the third one was a 9-year-old little girl. And I got in the back of the truck with the children and I had the driver take us to the compound back at 9th Engineer Battalion to sick bay, the medical tent, medical hooch. And I'm sitting in the back of the truck and I got this little girl's head in my lap and her brains are falling out in my lap. And this is just war, you know what I'm saying? And I don't like telling this story because it upsets me when I tell it. I noticed that when they picked the pieces for this show, they didn't pick none of those. I did 10 paintings. The other 8 got blood and guts and brains and that. The 2 that they picked was a Marine running out there trying to stop another Marine from throwing a grenade and some Vietnamese working in the fields. Those are the 2 they selected. But I think that when you're dealing with something like this, you have to kind of let young people know what war is because they will not want it. And I think any person who understands war and how it devastates people, especially in Vietnam. I was blown up twice in Vietnam, one by an 81 millimeter mortar. I could have died with that one. And then I was walking beside a tank that ran over a claymore mine, and that was the second time I was blown up. And I thought I was dead that time because I was up in the air looking down at my body. And I saw 4 Marines run out in the rice paddy and grab me, put me on the road, and start pumping my chest. I said, I don't know why they doing that. Can't they see I'm dead? I thought I was dead. They kept pumping. One brother wouldn't give up on me. He kept pumping, and I started choking and coughing, and I came back into my body. My ears were ringing, and I was numb all over. And I sit and I look at that. And I sit and I look at everything that this government does from the time it set foot on this continent. When I said the birth of this nation was conceived in the genocide of the red man, whenever you come to steal people's land, you better kill them all, otherwise you're not going to get their land. And that's what they're trying to do to the Palestinians. And that's why they're trying to kill all the Palestinians, because they want to justify the stealing of that land. And I think that we need to understand that we got to take a position on that. I like what Emory did with the pigs, how he created the pig and had the pig stand up on 2 hooves and take the form of a villain. And when you look at these billionaires and millionaires that's running this country and trying to take over the world, the best name for them is pigs, because they're greedy, they're low-natured beasts, they're foul, depraved traducers, usually find masquerading as a victim of an unprovoked attack. That's what a pig is. And I think that we all have to stand up against that. And that's what we did in the Black Panther Party. And I appreciate the fact that they gave me an international outlook on everything, which eventually led me to the All-African People's Revolutionary Party. And I worked with the All-African People's Revolutionary Party up until this day. And we're still trying to solve things all over the world. And we're trying to support any people's just struggle. And you got to be on the side of right. And I realized when I was in Vietnam that I was on the side of wrong when I was a mercenary in that force.
Thank you so much. So, thank you. It's important for us to think about what we're going to do. We're in a moment right now where everyone has to decide what we are going to do. And I hope that you've gotten some inspiration from these artists. I know that we are behind time. We were going to leave time for questions. There is a table full of food, etc., in the back. Would you like to ask, I think I can take 2 questions? Would you, or do you want to go hang out? Questions? Raise your hand if you want questions. Okay, all right. Who would like to ask a question? Okay, do you want to, why don't you come up? Yeah, you can stand up, okay.
So hi, my name is Jen. I'm one of the counselors for the university here. So some of our students are here from the Curated program. So basically we bring in students from the Camden City Public Schools, and we bring them here to gain access to college and get to see like what it is to have an education and stuff like that. My question is, what would be an piece of advice you would give our students and our youth, especially with the political climate we're in today?
What advice
Go ahead.
to these young students? And they're high school students? Middle and high school. Would anyone like to take that?
I currently work at a high school. You know, it's like you got to read. You got to know history. Just saying they did something wrong, that was the one thing that the Black Panther Party instilled in us. You have to study. Matter of fact, we had a saying, no investigation, no right to speak. In other words, if you didn't know what you were talking about and you had done an investigation, be quiet. So the thing about it is you have to teach them about the history of the world, not just you know, that sanitized version we get, but some of the things behind this. You say, okay, George Washington and all those people founded the country, but what did they do to do that? What was behind that? Because it goes all the way back to Europe. the history of capitalism and how it's affecting people. So if you don't have any history and any context for this, because I've seen schools where they taught revolutionary theories and didn't teach all the history. Those kids went off and joined the Marine Corps and became cops because they didn't get both sides of the story. So I'm saying you got to give them history, and you got to teach it in a way that they understand it. Because one of the things the left is notorious for is speaking above people's heads. It's like when I got back from the Black Panther Party and I went to work in the community, and I was in one of the worst parts of D.C. I thought it was a wonderful part myself. But the kids taught me that, what are you talking about, man? Why are you using all those big words? And so I had to learn to break it down. Because if you really know it, you can break it down. If you have to continually use those words, you don't know it. So what I'm saying is that break history down for them, tell them what stuff means, and use every opportunity to teach. Because when kids come to you with mistaken ideas, it's not that they don't know, it's your opportunity to teach. Because kids are always coming with like crazy stuff, because they're kids and they don't know, so they just blurt out some foolishness and misinformed ideas. And so this is your opportunity to teach. And I actually got that from Huey, because one time we were at I would cut it off. I'm right at the end. And somebody starts saying something, and one of the guys said, we need to stop it. Huey said, no, this is my opportunity to teach, because if I'm right, they will see it. So the thing is teach.
Yeah.
Educate, deliberate.
Okay, thank you so much. Did you want to say something?
Well, I did, but and it's pretty much on the same line. I think that everything that we teach our children in this country are mostly based on lies. Mm-hmm. When you talk about this nation was born in the genocide of the red men and the enslavement of Africans, and the forefathers, Abraham, Washington, George Lincoln, what they did, they were slaveholders. They had slaves. Thomas Jefferson was a child molester, raping Sally Hemings when she was 14 years old and having children by her. We have to be honest when we talk to these kids. Don't lie to them. I sit up here and I see the things. We try to make everything all nice and cute for the kids. But once these young men and women end up in the military service and sent to another land, and they get blood and guts in their hands, and they see all the people in the military service, some of them are baby rapers and child molesters, and they survive and they come back to this country and they're doing the same damn thing. No, we got to teach these kids the truth. We can't cutify everything for them. Let's tell the truth and let's vilify the villains. The villains are the ones who own and control the means of production, and they're trying to take over the world at the mercy of the masses of people. We got to do something about that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do I have time to add one little tiny thing, Colette? Colette,
I'm
do I
sorry?
have time?
Sure, go
won't
ahead. Quick.
I would just say, continue to be curious. Mm-hmm. I do the tour for the Black Panther Museum in Oakland, and a lot of those young people, they don't really know a lot of history. Bouncing off of what Malik was saying, who was Shirley Chisholm? Who is Ida B. Wells Barnett? Who is Ella Baker? They don't know those names, but they're curious. They want to know. They want to know a lot of things. So I'm just adding on to what these brothers were talking about. Add on for them to continue to be curious, to continue to investigate, continue to research and understand their history, understand who they are and whose they are.
So one thing that is a kind of ironic positive about the moment that we're in is we have to have everyone understand that you don't need to be disappointed that someone is lying to you. They, as has been said here, they are going to lie to you. And your job is to find the truth. It's out there. It's out there to be found. And I think that, we have an opportunity here to understand that you can't trust people who are in these institutions that we've all been taught to trust. And as a teacher, the person who asked the question, that means that you are setting yourself up for being questioned, and you have to be ready for that. Okay, I think that we have to end here. Everybody's said enough. You've got plenty to think about. And again, thank you so much for coming out.
I'd just like to end with one thing: serving the people, body and soul. That's what we were about.
All power to the people.
All right.